Hi, Sarah.
Hi, Rachel. I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy to have you here. And congratulations. I mean, your performance in this is just perfect. It's beautiful.
Thank you so much.
Now, there's been lots of adaptations of Philip Roth's work, but Indignation is being called one of the best. So what drew you to this project?
Well, James Schamus, first and foremost.
He's the director.
He's the director and writer, and he is obviously a giant in American independent film. He used to run Focus Features. He's written and produced for Ang Lee, and he's just worn kind of so many hats in the industry. And when I heard that he would be directing his first feature, I thought, sign me up. I want to see anything. I'll be a gaffer. I was just really excited by the prospect of working with him because he's so intelligent, and I knew he would be the perfect person to adapt Philip Roth. And then when I read this script, I was blown away because I felt so deeply connected to both Marcus and Olivia, and so I really fell in love with the story.
Yeah. Yeah. Now it's set in the 1950s, and you've played in period pieces before, in A Dangerous Method and in 11/22/63. But as somebody who didn't live through the 1950s, how do you prepare to play a woman in that era, and in particular this woman who kind of bucks at the conventions of the time?
Well, I love research, and I love that part of my job. Is I love diving into a period from all different angles. And James being a professor also as well. He's also a professor at Columbia. He's so boring. No, he really kind of treated this as if he was almost teaching a course, and he provided us with all these kind of different tools, whether it was reading material, dialect coach, music, art direction. He was so open in the process and sharing with us the entire world, and also at guiding us towards the kind of research that he felt was integral to the film. So for me, he really believed that Philip Roth was heavily influenced by Sylvia Plath in the writing of Olivia Hutton. And so I revisited a lot of Plath's work. And then I also read for the first time, I had never read the Plath journals, which are incredible, and kind of opened up this wonderful world to me for a young woman who is very bright in college and struggling with depression and struggling with a lot of things at that time. So it was so interesting because there were just little things from the Plath journals that I was able to pick up on, like the notion that if you were a woman, you couldn't really leave your dormitory on the weekends or in the evenings unless you were signed out by a male. And so women were kind of just, dying to get out on the weekend and get a date. And it didn't really even matter with who. They just wanted to get out because they didn't want to be the sad, lonely single girl stuck at the dormitory. So even those moments when Marcus asks her out and she comes kind of downstairs on that first date and she's getting ready to go and she looks so thrilled and you don't know, is she thrilled because she's going out on a date, or is she thrilled to just get the hell out of the dorm? So it was just small things like that really helped. And also in the handwriting scene, I copied Sylvia Plath's penmanship, so I was tracing her writing for a number of weeks because James wanted me to write like her,
right, like Sylvia Plath.
Yeah, and so there were just
interesting
little things like that really help.
Well, and it's interesting because you play a character who is has an individual struggle with mental illness, but at the same time you can feel the very narrow opening for her to express herself because of the time as well. So she's incredibly bright. She's open-hearted. She's sexual. So how did you manage that tension between the kind of buttoned-down constraints and then also this young woman who, is kind of desperate to be alive despite her depression? It's
interesting because when I was doing a lot of, the research part of it, and I was listening to a lot of the music of that time, and at first when I signed on for the project, I thought, okay, this is such an interesting era. It's going to be, Elvis Presley and this and that. But that really didn't come until much later. It was a lot of Perry Como. Yes. And
it is white bread 1950s.
It really is just so, it's so one-dimensional in its proper and rigid culture and attitudes. And so it was a real adjustment for me to kind of wrap my head around that time period. But One thing I love about James and about how he talks about this film is that he really feels as though Marcus and Olivia were outsiders, and they were very bright, intelligent young people bumping up against the ideologies of their time and bumping up against the power structures, be it the patriarchal power structures, the political power structures, the gender power structures, and it's about what happens to them when they question those dominant ideologies. And I think that's really important today even.
Yeah.
Is what happens when we question power structures? What are the consequences? What happens to young people? How do we punish them? How do we deal with them? And I think that that's extremely relevant, and not just in America right now, but everywhere.
Well, I think it's so interesting because, this is set on a campus, and you have a young woman who is, she's a sexual woman, and rumors start to spread about her. She's more sexually adventurous Olivia's more sexually adventurous than Marcus. And although it's set in the 1950s, it didn't feel so different than the slut-shaming that happens now to young women who are sexually assertive.
Absolutely. I think it's one of those things where when I read the book and then we were discussing the script, James, Logan, and myself, we were talking about Olivia and the reputation that she kind of garners on campus. And Logan said, well, was she with the other guys, or was she with the roommate? Was she with this? I think she was. And I turned to James and I said, I don't really think she was. I think these are just kind of these rumors that have started from this one kind of encounter. And so and James was on the same page as me. And so it's one of those things where I feel like sometimes your first sexual encounters are shrouded in mystery and curiosity and confusion and embarrassment. And the slut-shaming that's associated with Olivia is not so different than what happens today. But one thing that I love about her is that she kind of confronts him about it in the scene in the library, and she kind of just waltzes right up to him and says, about that, about what happened. This is what I think, and how come you're acting like this? Yeah. And she's just so blunt, and he's so shocked by her openness and it's one of the things that I just love about her.
Yeah. If you're just joining us, I'm Rachel Giese in for Shad, and this is Q. I'm talking with Sarah Gadon, who stars in the new film Indignation, and it's out in theaters today. I couldn't help but be surprised to have such a character in a Philip Roth story, because Philip Roth is not, great writer, and everything. He's not known for great depictions of women or fair depictions of women. So, did you find Olivia on the page as you portrayed her, or did you feel that you were sort of being able to fill in who she was?
I think it's a combination of the two. I think that James, when he adapted the novel, he did something very clever. At the beginning of the film, you kind of meet Olivia as a much older woman. And that's not in the novel. That's just a beginning that he kind of created as a way into the story. And I thought it was very smart because it really challenges the idea of perspective and of history and of remembering the past. And so you never really know, is this story about Marcus speaking posthumously about his life and remembering of Olivia, or is it Olivia remembering Marcus? And what are the implications of that kind of retelling of the novel, that retelling of the story? So I think that in and of itself adds more dimension to the character. But there's something about Olivia that I love as, because she's not really a classic Philip Roth woman. She looks, and the way that she is aesthetically, she is iconic, 1950s, white, blonde. She could be a movie star of the time. Yeah. She's coded in all these very specific ideas of what it was to be a young college woman in the early 50s. But then underneath that, she is fraught with tension, and she is constantly fighting this kind of exterior expectations of her as a woman, and she's fighting that, and she's frustrating that, and she's oscillating between the expectations of her and how she really feels, the life she should lead, and what she really wants to do, and the agency that she doesn't have, and the agency that she does have, and that, for me, is what I was drawn to in the character, and that's what I think makes her very, very compelling. And a lot of women come up to me after the screening and have so many things to say about her, and so many different points of connection. Even though she is she is very troubled, I think a lot of people connect with her.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I feel like all the way through, she's pushing against the kind of fantasy that's been created about who she might be to actually reveal who she really is.
Yes. And at times she enjoys the fantasy. So she really plays into the fantasy when it is conducive to her own kind of sexual desires and curiosities, and then she fights against it. So it's not so clear.
Yeah. I have to ask you, I know that you're just in pre-production now for the Alias Grace adaptation.
Yeah.
It's for CBC and Netflix based on the Margaret Atwood novel, and you play Grace Marks. So
excited.
I mean, I think everyone's super excited about this. Can you talk a bit about how you're preparing for that role?
Yes, it's a massive undertaking. One, because it's such a beloved novel, and two, because I feel like the bar has been set very high by Margaret Atwood and Sarah Polley, who adapted it, and Mary Herron, who is directing it.
It's quite a powerhouse of women behind this.
I'm so excited to be surrounded by such intelligent and experienced and articulate creators. I feel really lucky. But right now I'm in the midst of working on my Northern Irish accent. I'm learning how to sew. I am learning how to do calligraphy. I'm going to Pioneer Village tomorrow to learn how to milk a cow and churn butter and all that fun stuff. And they kind of said to me in pre-production, they said, we're going to put you through Pioneer boot camp. Are you okay with that? I said, okay, can I come home and sleep in my bed though at the end of the day? And they said, yeah, that's fine. So there's a lot, but I'm so excited. The production is so ambitious, and I think it's going to be really special.
And the last thing I wanted to ask, given that you've played these women in different eras, what do you take from that now for your own sense of self, your own sense of identity as a woman, when you have to embody these characters who lived in different eras, who had to face different kinds of things? What do you take away from that, or what do you learn from how those women have lived? Or
it's a wonderful and constant reminder of how far we've come and how much further we need to go. I think that I'm really inspired by the women that I play, and I have a tremendous amount of respect for them, even if they're fictional creations, because they are trailblazers, and they are fighting against the kind of standards of their time. And so I'm always so inspired by the women that I've had the opportunity to play.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
It was such a pleasure to have you. And congratulations on Indignation. It's lovely.